Yeah, I'm ready to get started when you guys are.
Same here.
What's this? That you guys could still hear me despite the fact I was muted. My apologies. Okay.
Funny running into y'all again, I suppose.
Yeah. I agree with Steve. We have no reason to wait. I guess we should get started with the introductions.
Fine by me. Okay, my name is Elijah Wagner. I will be your first affirmative construct, or your affirmative constructive. I think there's an echo somewhere. If someone could mute their mic. Oh, thank you very much.
And then my name is Daniel Paulson, and I will be your affirmative rebuttal speaker in today's round. Thank you so much for your time to judge today.
Hello, my name is Masako Orlando, and I'll be your negative constructive speaker for this round. Again, thank you all so much for your time.
And that leaves me, Evan Lopez. I'll be your negative rebuttal speaker. And like everyone else said, thank you so much. Well, I guess before we get started, I'm sure it'd be very helpful for both teams if we could hear a little bit more about yourselves as judges, anything that we can do to make the round easier for you, or anything that you wouldn't like us to do. I guess we could start with judge closest to me is Garrett Long. Okay. Well, we can't hear you. You're still muted if you are talking. I guess. Oh.
Sorry about that. No, you are all good to go on my end. So.
Okay. Anything that Rose Piles would like to say for the round?
Good to go on my end. I am fairly new. I'm new to judging this tournament, so looking forward to it.
All right, and that leaves Christina Rappersat.
Hi, good afternoon. As you said, my name is Christina Rampersad. I have been judging for 3 years with the NCFCA. I'm also working as staff for the tournaments, doing some stuff with communications and things like that. I also help at a local club with coaching for speech and debate. My son competes in LD and 5 different speech categories. So when it comes to debate, this is my first time with Paladin, but I think very highly of the program. My son has also done stuff with them. For me, keep it clean, keep straight to your points, make sure that I can follow your thoughts and what you're trying to present to me. Don't get into definition wars, and above all, have fun. Let's have a good time.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, with those introductions, I believe it is my turn to begin. I will be beginning the first affirmative constructive speech. This will be a 6-minute speech. And begin. The world population is living, working, vacationing, increasingly conglomerating along the coasts and standing on the front row of the greatest, most unprecedented plastic waste tide ever faced. For over 50 years, global production and consumption of plastics have turned to continue to rise. An estimated 299 million tons of plastics were produced in 2013, representing a 4% increase over 2012 and confirming an upward trend over the past few years. In 2008, our global plastic consumption worldwide has been estimated at 260 million tons, and plastic consumption reached 297.5 million tons by the end of 2015. Plastic is versatile, lightweight, flexible, moisture-resistant, strong, and relatively inexpensive. Those are the attractive qualities that lead us around the world to such a voracious appetite and overconsumption of plastic goods. However, durable and very slow to degrade plastic materials are used in the production of so many products, all ultimately become waste with staying power, which means they do not return to the ground. They are not biodegradable. Our tremendous attraction to plastic, coupled with an undeniable behavior propensity of increasing over-consuming, discarding, littering, and thus polluting, has become a combination of lethal nature. Now, real quick, let's define plastic, just so we don't get into any definition wars. Plastics are a wide range of synthetic or semi-synthetic materials that use polymers as a main ingredient. The plasticity during production makes it possible for plastic to be molded, extruded, or pressed into solid objects of various shapes, making it an adaptable material for many different uses. Plastic bottles. These are all from Merriam-Webster, I believe. A plastic bottle is a bottle constructed from high-density or low-density plastic. Plastic bottles are typically used to store liquids such as water, soft drinks, motor oil, cooking oil, medicine, shampoo, milk, and ink, and so on and so forth. The size ranges from very small bottles to very large carboys. Harm 1. The plastics problem. In 2015, Texas A&M graduate student Christine Figener recorded a video of her colleagues removing a straw lodged in a turtle's nostril. Since then, the skip at the straw, save a turtle, has become a slogan for people determined to decrease their plastics use. But critics say the marine impact of plastics is only part of the problem. Plastics pollution is not just an oceans issue. It's a climate issue, and it's a human health issue, says Claire Arkin, communications coordinator for the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, a global network aiming to reduce pollution and eliminate waste incineration. Under a business-as-usual scenario in which policies continue to foster plastics production, the sector's fossil fuel consumption will only increase. Today, about 4 to 8% of annual global oil consumption is associated with plastics, according to the World Economic Forum. If this reliance on plastics persists, plastics will account for 20% of oil consumption by 2050. Now, I'd like to get into my second harm. Harm 2, environmental harm. This is from healthyhuman.com. 80% of plastic water bottles end up in landfills. Each bottle leaks harmful chemicals into our environment along the way as it decomposes. Studies show that the toxins decomposing bottles of water leach into our environment and cause a variety of health issues, including reproductive and cancer. Single-use plastic water bottles create an immense environmental problem and should be eliminated as quickly as possible with as much public support as possible. Every single second, 1,000 people open a bottle of water in the United States. Each day, people of the US throw away more than 60 million plastic water bottles, most of which end up in landfills or as litter in America's streets, parks, and waterways. Americans throw away 35 billion empty water bottles a year. Of those, only 12% are recycled. Out of everything we put in our recycle bins at home, approximately 50% is never recycled. Every person in America drinks an average of more than 30 gallons of bottled water a year. That means it takes 90 gallons of water for just one person to drink bottled water. In a world where 783 million people don't have access to clean drinking water, that's half of what one person would need for the entire year. Harm 3. Top types of litter. The plastic bottle industry is creating a major environmental problem, which is unprecedented in public litter problems, except for possibly the plastic bag. Some organizations have come to understand what problems plastic drink bottles are really causing. This evidence shows that plastic water bottles are harmful. And as you can see, I am clearly out of time. My partner will get into our plan in the next speech. However, I would like to first go over Mandate 1. We would like to ban the use of one-time plastic water bottles in the United States. That is all for my speech. I stand open for cross-examination.
All right. Can you hear me all right? Am I too loud, too quiet?
Yes, sir. You're good.
Okay. Well, I have 3 minutes on the timer. I'll assume that we're all ready. Okay. All right. So you said that your teammate will present the rest of your plan in a rebuttal speech, right?
I don't know. Yes, I did say that. I'm not sure if he's allowed to, but that's all the time I was allotted.
Okay. So at this point in the round, we only know that you're going to ban one-time use plastics, and we don't know how or when or any of those.
Yes, I can tell you if you'd like.
Let's talk about first what you talked about in your case. So you talked a lot about how bad plastics were. So would you say that by the purpose of your plan to ban plastic water bottles, would you say that that would result in people stopping drinking water?
So I believe I said specifically one-time use plastic water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
Could you rephrase the question?
Right. So it's your position that you don't want people to stop drinking water in general, right?
Oh, no, I don't want people to stop
and you
drinking
also
water.
said
That's
that most people, they drink their water from plastic water bottles, correct? Or the one-time use?
I believe I said that I don't know. I'm not sure that I said that. I could have.
Okay, so do we know how many Americans rely on plastic water bottles?
No, I wouldn't.
So would you say that the plastic water bottles represent the cheapest solution to drinking water?
No.
So there are cheaper alternatives out there, but companies don't want to produce them, even though they're cheaper?
I mean, plastic water bottles are for convenience.
Yeah, so is there a more convenient or cheaper option out there?
It depends. We're just trying to ban one-time use. We're not saying that you can't take a hydro flask or cooler.
Right, so for all the people that currently use plastic water bottles, you'd say that they use them because they're cheap?
I suppose so. Or just water.
Okay, so then is your position that these people will just go and migrate to a different use of drinking water or liquids? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes, that is my position.
Okay, so these are different types of alternatives to single-use plastics, like, for instance, metal, right?
I suppose so.
Okay, so do you know any of the main alternatives, or you just want to ban plastic water bottles? And
so we're not trying to ban plastic bottles, period. Say you've got those Gatorade bottles that NFL players use. those are fine because you don't throw them away immediately after you use them. But
Wait, so people don't throw away like Gatorade bottles when they're done with them?
no. I'm saying the not the Gatorade bottles that you twist the cap. The Gatorade bottles where you
Gotcha. Okay, so can you name any number of alternatives to these one-time use plastic water bottles that people would be going to?
absolutely. So you could use a hydro flask. You could use any type of non-disposable plastic bottles as long as they are not one-time use.
Great. No further questions, because we're all out of time.
Starting with 4 minutes of prep time, timer starting now.
I didn't finish. Oh gosh.
You are not muted, Elijah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was.
You are still not muted, Elijah.
I know. I'm on your call.
Stopping prep time, 3 minutes and 20 seconds remaining. Let me just write that down real quick. 3:20. All right. All right. All right, this will be up to an 8-minute speech if everyone's ready.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to assume the 3 judges are ready. Great.
Yes.
All right, great. 8 minutes on the clock. Timer. Oops, let me set myself up here. Timer starting now. It's because we as the negative side believe that an abrupt ban of plastic water bottles will make us lose every single benefit that we have and that they won't be able to provide us with anything to get them back. We need a smooth and delicate transition that is necessary to preserve our quality of life while finding a sustainable alternative. And it's because we believe that we are not affirming this resolution. Before I go into the harms of passing an affirmative plan, I like to bring up a quick definition of a ban. It's talking about an official order that prevents something from being used or done. So we do know that this is a 100% official, abrupt ban. With that, I like to go into some harms of passing this plan. So my first harm, you can write down as an increased plastic usage. Or actually, let me move back up and tell you a little bit more about what the negative philosophy is. Our negative philosophy for this round is that banning plastic water bottles outright would be counterproductive and leave millions lost. And I'll explain this a little bit more within my first harm of increased plastic usage. Now, a study on the University of Vermont's ban on selling single-use plastic water bottles found that a total shipment of plastic water bottles actually increased by 20% as consumers increased their consumption of less healthy bottled beverages rather than switching from using reusable bottles and drinking from water fountains, end quote. So we can see here that when we're banning outright of plastic water bottles, we're going to see an increasing of other uses of plastic and other types of plastic bottles, which leads me to harm 2, because this is a wild shift. Subpoint A, under this argument, you can write down as demand is high. Quote, banning water bottle restricts customers' access to a product that they want and negatively affects small businesses. Now, a survey of Harris Poll for the International Bottled Water Association found that 90% of Americans think that bottled water should be available wherever drinks are sold, and 31% saying that they mostly only drink bottled water. So we can see here that right now demand is really high, and this is going to be a wild shift that is not going to be beneficial for the people, which leads me to subpoint B, which is needed in emergency situations. Quote, bottled water is a practical emergency water supply. Bottled water is essential to public health, and if tap water is not drinkable, then bottled water is a necessary replacement. An example of this would be in 2014 when officials in Flint, Michigan changed the city's water supply from Lake Huron over to the Flint River. And the Flint River was highly corrosive, and it eroded water pipes, delivering tap water to residents' homes, resulting in iron and lead poisoning, leaching into the water, poisoning those who drank it. So they had to go to bottled water, which is actually really interesting because certain states, like in St. Joseph, LA, they relied on state-issued bottled water as a replacement of tap water after high levels of lead were found in their systems. We can see here that we need plastic water bottles, especially in emergency situations. Which leads me to my last subpoint under this argument as no easy alternatives. And this was touched on a little bit in cross-examination, but from the European Environmentalist Agency, quote, currently only about 1% of plastics and plastic products on the global market are considered bio-based, compostable, or biodegradable, end quote. And when we look at other alternatives such as aluminum, pouches, cartoons, they can be a lot of money. Cartoons and pouches are luxury items that are not ready for widespread use. Which leads us to the most important part of the negative speech. We are going to be providing a counter plan. Our counter plan mandate number 1 is creating a gradual tax on plastic water bottles starting at 1 cent and increasing by 5 every year. I'll say it again because it's really important. Create a graduating tax on plastic water bottles starting at 1% and increasing by 5 every year. Our agency and enforcement is Congress, the President, and any other necessary bodies. With that, I'd like to move on to our solvency, or another word for saying why we know that this plan will work and it will be helping the people. My first solvency point you can write down as a smooth transition. People will be able to transition smoothly and easily since they're given more time. And also businesses and manufacturers will also have more time to create environmental alternatives to plastic that are affordable as well. A second point on our solvency point is that we know that taxing works. This is from Washington, from Bloomberg. Taxing bottled water has been shown to be effective by a couple of measures. First, in terms of consumer behavior, Washington State passed a tax water bottle in 2010, and it produced a market reduction in bottled water consumption. A 2013 study from that tax from UC Berkeley found that when taxed, the average quantity of bottled water purchased in treated states dropped significantly by 6.4% as compared to the other untaxed control states. So we can see here that not only is this going to be a smooth transition for citizens within the United States, but also we do know that this will work at decreasing the use of water bottles. With that, I like to go ahead and do some direct refutation to my opponent's case. You can write down all 3 of the problems that they showed with the current situation, such as the climate issues of their harm number 1, their environmental harm of harm number 2, and top types of litter of harm number 3. You can write down my first response as worse with an affirmative ballot. I like to point you back to the piece of evidence that I talked about within the first couple of minutes within my speech, talking about how when they banned plastic or one-use plastic water bottles, they actually found an increase in plastic usage. So we can see here that all of those issues that my opponents brought up with the first 3 are actually going to be worse with an affirmative world, especially since they're not giving people enough time to smoothly transition. Which leads me to my second response as harms minimized with a negative world. If we are to allow a gradual tax of bottled water, we can see that this will work and it's going to be safer and much less harmful for the people in terms of transitioning. So there will actually be a decreasing in the use of plastic, like I talked about within my second solvency point. With that, I like to respond to my opponent's plan, or lack thereof. Now, I hate running vague plan arguments, but this plan is very, very vague. Even from the first mandate that they gave, which was a ban of one-time use water bottles, judges, we don't know what timeline. So this could happen tomorrow or in the next 10 years. We don't have an agency, so we really don't know who's in charge of this. We don't have an enforcement. We don't know who's going to be enforcing the ban of single-use plastic water bottles. And we don't know if this is a legislative or if this needs funding or how much money this is actually going to cost. So again, because this plan is really, really vague, that's my overarching response, but the impact is that we cannot pass a vague plan. This is an irresponsible policy decision of the affirmative world. So the impact is that we should not pass this affirmative plan. So in the couple of seconds that I have, I just want to really quickly go down what I talked about. I talked about how the philosophy of the negative is how this is a counterproductive policy, and it's actually going to leave millions lost and without environmentally friendly and good uses of water. Next, I talked about the harms of passing a plan like this is how we're going to see an increased use of plastic usage. This is going to be a wild shift that is not going to give people enough time to actually transition, because we are passing a counter plan that is actually going to be helpful for the people. We are going to see a minimization of uses of plastic. This is a smooth transition. And because this taxation things have been worked in the past, why I strongly urge a negative ballot. Thank you so much for your time. And I now stand ready for cross-examination.
All right. I'm beginning. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Beginning cross-examination. Begin. So you mentioned in your speech that people did need plastic water bottles in certain specific case scenarios, correct?
People do need water bottles, yes.
Okay. And then you also seemed to mention that plastic water bottles were, you wanted a gradual decrease of plastic water bottles.
That's not at all what I directly coded in my speech. We're having a gradual increase within the taxation of water bottles.
No, I'm referencing the beginning of the speech when you said that you wanted a decrease, a steady decrease of plastic water bottles. I'm just a little curious how the two coincide.
Okay, great. So when things are taxed, people are less likely to buy them. Like I brought up in a couple of different studies that I talked about, how we saw that there was a decreasing in the purchasing of water bottles when there was taxation on those water bottles.
Okay, how does your plan uphold the mandate?
Our plan is increasing a gradual tax on plastic water bottles, thereby
the
taxing
mandate.
water bottles.
The mandate specifically says ban a ban of water bottles.
Oh, yes. So we're not actually running a topical counterplan because that would be for the affirmative world. We're running a non-topical counterplan as the negative side, and that is how we are negating the resolution. We should not be banning plastic water bottles.
Thank you.
The affirmative team will be using some prep time.
Well, I was going to try to catch her in a...
Elijah, I think we can... I don't think you're muted.
I'm confused. So how am I not muted?
Because we can all hear you.
So I'm seeing Elijah Wagner at the top, and I'm seeing a muted button, and my muted button is... I'm very confused here. I don't know how to unmute myself. I'm just going to leave and return. Is that okay?
That's okay with me.
Okay.
Stopping affirmative prep time at 3 minutes and 16 seconds. So this is the first affirmative rebuttal, and we will. This is going to be a 5-minute speech, and as long as if no one interrupts, I'm going to assume everyone is ready. Okay, then I'm going to begin. So in this speech, I'm going to be making sure that all of the arguments of the affirmative team are clear and responding to the majority of the negatives arguments in the round. So first of all, I'd like to start off with the fact that the majority of she brought up a counterplan of saying how they're going to increase, not put a ban, but put an increase on tax. And so basically, yes, we do agree that this is for the negative side and that it will support their side of the resolution. So first of all, I'd like to talk about how they're saying that since people need plastic bottles, that we should keep doing it, and that how we've had pollution in the past, and so it's not going to necessarily hurt any. It's only going to help people by continuing to allow plastic bottles. But the problem here is they're basically saying that there's already pollution in society, and so it's totally fine to add more simply because people use it all the time, which is a very good point on the negative side. But here I'm going to explain why this is bad. Because as we've explained, pollution causes there to be less oxygen inside the atmosphere and more carbon dioxide and other chemicals, which is a bad thing and causes many environmental problems, which should not be our priority in the round. Our priority should not be simply to allow convenience, but it should be to try and protect our world as best as we can by stopping pollution and environmental pain, which is why we must put a ban on plastic bottles. And this is why the affirmative team stands resolved that the United States should put a ban on plastic bottles. And so basically, just to make sure that try and clarify some of the things about our plan, is that our enforcement agency was originally the Congress, President, and local law enforcement. Timeline: all plastic bottles will be disposed of before the next fiscal year. And then now to the advantages that my partner briefly mentioned at the beginning of the speech. The first one is that there will be fixing environmental pain. This is pretty simple. By removing one of the main types of pollution, and main types of environmental things that cause environmental pain, we are in turn going to reduce the amount of environmental problems in our society. And then our second advantage is also pretty simple. Pollution will decrease as shown by our evidence. And so this is our second advantage that we will try, that I'll try my best to explain. And the evidence that is under this argument is while paper is biodegradable and avoids some of the problems of plastic, Taylor says that huge increases of paper together with upstick plastic water bottles means banning plastic, stopping plastic from and greenhouse gas emissions. That said, these bans do reduce non-biodegradable litter. And so as we see, plastic bottles is one of the number one types of biodegradable litter, which is exactly why we need to remove this. And which is exactly why we need to put a ban on water bottles, because they are biodegradable, which basically means it is not disintegratable. So it won't disintegrate over time. It takes an enormous amount of time in order for it to disintegrate, which makes it very harmful for the environment. And to add on to this, these plastic bottles emit poisonous gases into the atmosphere when they begin to disintegrate. When they are in economy. And so we need to stop the massive amount of usage, to stop economic pain, and also to solve the problems presented by the status quo, which is why the affirmative team still stands fully resolved that the United States federal government needs to put a ban on all plastic bottles. Thank you so much for your time. I now stand open for cross-examination.
All right, this will be up to 2 minutes of cross-examination if everyone's ready.
Yes.
All right, great. Let's get started. We don't like pollution, right?
Correct.
So whichever plan in this round decreases pollution, that should be the better plan, right?
I believe the plan that solves all three of the harms prevented by the status quo should most likely win the round.
All right, great. Did you ever directly respond to increased plastic usage when we were to ban plastic water bottles?
I did not directly respond to that argument. No.
All right, thank you. You talked about pollution going down. Can you just clarify a few things for me? What was the source of that article?
Oh, this was by an article written by, sorry, let me pull up his name. His name was Flora Goodall, and he is part of the Healthy Human Society, and he is a has a medical degree, and his goals basically in the article was to try and show why pollution is harmful.
All right, and he's talking about all plastic water bottles. Is that correct?
Yes.
So excuse me, all plastic bottles.
All plastic bottles.
All right, thank you.
So.
By talking about the specific piece of evidence or the specific argument, are you negating the counter plan that the negative side proposed?
Could you rephrase the question one more time? Sorry.
Sure. So, do you negate the negative counter plan?
As I tried to state, as I stated, I will try and respond to the counter plan in my next speech.
I'm just asking you right now, do you negate the counter plan?
I do not agree with the counter plan. I have not negated to it yet.
All right. Thank you. No further questions. 8 seconds remaining. And Evan, going to take some prep time. We have.
Yeah.
Where is it?
That won't be necessary.
Oh, okay.
5 minutes on my timer. I'll assume that we're all ready. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. In the beginning of 2020, we were all oblivious. And then COVID-19 struck, and everyone rushed to go get some toilet paper and go get a mask and go get one of those temperature checker thingies. But there was a massive shortage, and people were really scared because there just wasn't enough supply to meet up with the massive change in demand that unforeseen circumstances had brought about. The Affirmative Team's plan does the same exact thing, and on arguably even more personal and essential level with water. I'm talking about the massive radical shift that they're going to be proposing that ultimately is pretty reckless with the amount of water that we'd have to be dealing with, that ultimately causes a massive shift in the way that our society has to demand water that we simply aren't prepared for, and why the negative counter plan is by far the best solution. Let's talk about what he said. He confirmed the extra details of his plan with basically some new arguments in his rebuttal speech. So yeah, these are new arguments and we could just go ahead and negate them, but I think that they are really important, especially considering that we've been talking about these similar ideas about reducing pollution, as well as talking about an immediate abrupt shift, which actually he confirms with his mandate of his plan, saying that before the next fiscal year, which is October 1st of 2021, it would be, you will have to be gone with all plastic water bottles. My clarification / response you can write down as worst fears confirmed. Again, worst fears confirmed. Remember back in the early, what was it, March, February? So back when COVID-19 first struck and everyone had to go out and get a mask and everyone was everything was gone. All the toilet paper was gone from the shelves. In the same exact way, we only have a couple months to get rid of all the plastic water bottles in our entire solution, our entire nation, which simply doesn't make sense because the alternatives aren't prepared yet. The supply does not match the massive shift in demand that my opponents want to create. That leads us to ultimately why we need a sustainable, smooth transition in our counterplan, which, as I might point out, was not responded to, and my opponent wishes to respond to it in his next speech, meaning that we will have heard a response to the negative team's arguments in the latter half of the round after skipping out on them. I just want you to remember that if my opponent tries to bring up any arguments against the counterplan in his next speech, that means I will only have one speech to respond to any concerns that they have. This is really contrary to debates, contrary to the rules and rebuttals. I wish it were different, but unfortunately, this is what we have to work with. But let's talk about what else he said. He talked about how we're fixing environmental pain. You can write our response down as makes it worse. Again, makes it worse, and for a couple of reasons. Number one is talking about what happens when we ban specifically plastic water bottles, but leave all the other alternative plastic water bottles open, like, for example, soda or other things that you'd get in plastic water bottles. The other problem with this idea is that you're also making it worse for the millions of people that depend on water, as we'll be explaining a little bit later. But let's just keep in mind that we're actually making it worse. But next he talked about how pollution goes down, and he quoted this guy saying what happens when we ban all plastic water bottles. My first response, you can write in air quotes, all bottles. Again, all bottles. Their plan is not banning all plastic water bottles for all different liquids that people consume, just plastic water bottles. The study that we brought up talked about when it was specifically plastic water bottles that were banned, but other ones were left open. People didn't start drinking from water fountains or going to get a hydro flask. They would start drinking from soda, and thus they saw a 20% increase in the amount of plastic that they were shipping out to produce. That's what happens when you don't ban all of the alternatives, which is exactly what my opponent is doing. Thus, this decrease in plastic pollution simply isn't the case because their plan is not taking everything into account. But next, he talked about how it's not fine for us to make the problem worse by continuing what we already have. And I'm assuming the impact or conclusion is that we should get rid of it as fast as possible. That leads to my response of a smart shift. Again, a smart shift. I agree. There is a problem with the massive amounts of plastics that we're producing. I also agree that there's a massive problem with the pollution that they're producing. But that doesn't mean that we should go and create a new COVID-19 virus situation where everyone has to go out and rush to buy a toilet paper or a mask, or in this case, figure out some alternative to the plastic water bottles. As Masako pointed out in a point about how there's no easy alternative, all the alternatives either cost $20 or $30, and a lot of Americans that depend on plastic water bottles simply don't have that in the budget, as well as the other things like biodegradable plastic or the cartons or the pouches. Those are all very small demand things. They're getting more and more popular over time, but a smart gradual shift of taxes that slowly changes demand as opposed to one quick slash is exactly what we need. Because all the arguments that we brought up in favor of our counter plan haven't been responded to. Because a sudden shift is not what we need, we must negate this resolution. Thank you so much. I'm now open for cross-examination as well.
Thank you. You were quite concise with that. No questions necessary. Thank you.
All right.
The affirmative team will be using the remainder of their prep time. no more affirmative prep time. This will be the last affirmative rebuttal speech, and this is a 4-minute speech. And I'm going to assume everyone's ready as long as there's no interruptions. Okay, then let's go ahead and just get started. Now, in this speech, I will be responding to the last speech of the negative team, and also bringing up at least our first voting issue, and also giving you the reason, and also explaining a few of our responses even more in depth. So first of all, he was talking about how all the other alternatives are much, much more expensive, and that it's even much harder for people to buy something other than a plastic bottle, which is why their plan is superior. But of course, a pack of plastic bottles, let's say a 24 pack, costs $7 for just a 24 pack of bottles. But a water filter, any water filter from almost any common store, a plastic little handheld water filter, is actually about $15 to $20. And if they're only using plastic water bottles for their only source of liquids, then that means it would in turn have a higher cost than just buying one water filter and reusing it and filling up their water bottles with a water filter. Whereas buying a 24 pack of water bottles, let's say they buy it twice in a month, that's $14 in a month, whereas you only had to pay $15 one time for a water pitcher. And then if you go to 2 months, now it's $28, and it's only $15 for a water filter. So the price for water bottles, if you have to buy, let's say 2 packs of 24 a month, which is very unreasonable, small amount of water, but let's just say that's the minimum that you'd use, it in turn is much cheaper just to buy one water filter one time for $15 just to get water into your water bottle. And then also they were saying how most people can't afford other things, such as other types of water bottle. But as I stated, water filters are much more affordable. But let's say they aren't affordable and they really do need plastic bottles. That means that the negative team's plan is actually bad because of this simple dilemma. Since they're raising tax, people will not want to buy plastic bottles, which means that they will in turn buy less plastic bottles. Yes, but the problem here is we reach the same problem as with what they are stating is wrong with our plan. Now they cannot afford plastic bottles, and they have to find another alternative that's cheaper for them instead of a plastic bottle solution. And so they do something similar to our plan. So in reality, their plan is not any better than ours. And our plan in reality is the simplest way to reach the goal of saving the economy, and which is why I will bring up this one voting issue, and my partner will bring up any remaining ones, is that it encourages using reusable water bottles. Again, encourages using reusable water bottles. This is very simple. It encourages using reusable water bottles because people now aren't going to just grab a plastic water bottle that contaminates our air and doesn't decompose. Now they have to fill up their water bottle with the filtered water. And so now it will save them money, and it will also help them use reusable water bottles, which is a very easy thing to do. Which is why at the end of today's debate round, I believe that affirmative ballot is warranted. Thank you so much for your time. I now stand open for cross-examination.
All right. 1 minute question. All right. If we're all ready.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to assume silence is. All right. 1 minute cross-examination starting. All right. So you said that it was more expensive to buy plastic water bottles per month than to have a water filter per month?
Over time, it would be more expensive.
All right. Great. And how expensive is it to buy water bottles? How expensive is a Hydro Flask?
I don't know exactly how expensive specific types of water bottles are, but you can go to the dollar store and buy dollar store water bottles.
All right. And how expensive is it to have running water inside of your house?
I don't have the exact numbers of how expensive it is to have running water now.
Great. So we can just say it's anywhere around $50 to $80 to have a monthly use of water. So which one is more expensive, having to pay $80, $90, $100 and also on top of that a water filter and also other water bottles, or having a 24-pack of water that is reliable and safe to drink?
It would, from that scenario, it would have to be the plastic water bottles if that's the correct scenario.
All right, thank you. And what about in a situation of emergency?
In the situation of emergency, it's pretty simple just to fill up a water bottle.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'll be taking a little bit of prep time. Asako, how much do we have left?
We have 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
All right. Quickly set that on my timer. All right. No further prep time is needed. This will be up to a 4-minute speech. And I'll assume that we're all ready, unless I hear any opposition. All right, then let's get started. In the wonderful kids TV show Phineas and Ferb, Phineas and Ferb's older brother, or older sister, I should say, Candace, is with her friend Stacy, and they're trying to do Candace's hair. But then they realize that they only have a couple minutes to get all of it done, and the book right in front of them says that they need to be there for at least 30 minutes. So what they decide to do is, instead of being smart and just saying that they're going to be late, they try to up both the heat and the amount of air that's going in, and trying to increase everything else to try and make up for the lost amount of time. But it comes out, and Candace's hair is completely ruined because they forgot that time is a really important factor. In the same way, the affirmative team is forgetting that time is really, really important when you're messing with the laws of supply and demand. And you can't just simply magic up any supplier, magic up a good batch of hair if you don't allow the proper time to settle. I want to talk about that, responding to what was said in the last speech and pointing out what wasn't said in the last speech, before providing 2 key voting issues, or 2 big reasons why you should be voting for the negative team and voting for the counter plan that we've presented. Let's start off with what he said. He said that packs might cost less, actually, than others. I'm going to have 3 responses. My first response is more expensive. Again, more expensive. The water filter isn't the only thing that you're buying when you're buying for whatever you want when you're getting water. So you have the faucet, then you put the water filter on, then you have to have the clean supply of water. Then you also have to have something to put the water into, unless you're drinking directly from the faucet, which I don't think people generally do. So obviously there's a lot more cost, like $80, $90. As they grade in cross-examination, that is more expensive in that scenario. My second response is crisis. Again, crisis. Sometimes you can't depend on your water supply. Like the millions of people during the Flint water crisis where their own tap water is simply not available to drink. And they relied on plastic packs of water that were able to store and be safe. Now, obviously, we can't just rely on water filters then either. My third response you can write down as not enough. Again, not enough. This is going back to the key thing that leads us to knowing that the worst fears are confirmed when we try to get rid of all plastic water bottles by October 1st of 2021, which is just a couple of months. Wait, yeah, just a couple of months. Obviously, we need to make sure that you can't just have everyone, millions of people going to your local store and buying a water filter, because there just aren't enough to supply that many people in such a short amount of time. Once again, time is the missing factor. And if that's what's going to happen, they're going to have people who are stuck without any source of water at all, because there simply isn't enough, leaving all those people who are in a crisis without a way to provide for themselves. He talked about how the neg is just as bad as the affirmative because we too are making it so that people can't afford it and they're going to have to buy other things. My response you can write down is time is the missing factor. Again, time is the missing factor. Here's the thing. They're going to rapidly spike up demand without letting supply be able to catch up, not allowing people to research how to make sustainable, cheap, and consistent ways of producing lots of, for example, biodegradable plastics, which are certainly a great thing in the future, as Masako read evidence for, but they only make up about 1%. There simply isn't enough there to be able to supply these packs of water that people need if they want to store it, like in the Flint water crisis. We don't have the alternatives there. However, a gradually increasing tax is something that allows us to be able to slowly shift demand and allow people to have time to say, all right, we're going to start producing more of the biodegradable plastics or alternatives to plastic water bottles, as opposed to, hey, everyone's coming to the store to buy something that's not plastic water bottles, we can't supply them. That leads to my first voting issue of the toilet paper crisis. Again, the toilet paper crisis. Just like there was a massive rush on the stores during the toilet paper crisis of 2020 and during COVID-19, we simply can't supply for all the demand that my opponents are providing. Instead, we need a gradually increasing tax to make sure that we can actually be able to serve all the people that need water. Thank you so much.
No prep time necessary. I will begin my final speech. Oh wait, Danny, did you want to cross-examine him?
No, there was nothing I needed to ask that was important.
Okay, then I will begin. 2 minutes on the clock. Begin. So first off, I would like to just come back and say that I sincerely apologize. I completely forgot that my partner could not bring up new points in the round. I'm used to team policy. However, Ms. Masako did us a great favor in allowing us to bring it up again as she mentioned it in her speech. So we are responding to her speech by bringing it up again as my partner did. So as all you judges will likely have done and wrote that down, I encourage you to remove that, as we did respond to our opponent's speech in that it's not contradicting the rules at all. Now that we've got that out of the way, I would also like to say that water bottles are not, plastic water bottles are, sorry, reusable plastic water bottles are not super inconvenient. I would also like to respond to my opponent's argument during the last speech, in which he said the water bottles, there would be a mad toilet paper rush for water bottles. Simply, this is not true. We said that we would, the mandate for this was fiscal year 2022. That was the timeline that my partner brought up. In that, we would create a period of time in which people could adjust, gradually move towards it. They would do it on their own time as not mandated by the government through a tax. And then I'd just like to get in my final voting issue before this round is over. Our plan guarantees less water bottles, and our opponent's plan just de-incentivizes it by saying that by taxing water of all things. For all these reasons, I strongly urge an affirmative ballot at the end of today's debate round.
All right. Thank you all so much for judging. Great job, guys.
Great job,
Well
guys.
done.
Thank you.
You guys
Great
did
job.
amazing.
Thank you so much for judging.
Yes.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Same to you.
All right.
Good luck.
Again, thank you guys so much for judging this round.
My
Good job,
pleasure.
guys.
Good
Bye.
job.
Thank you.
Yeah.